I was listening this morning also on the radio how they said that this stuff that's basically, it's ecstasy, the drug that people use, that's, I think it's a psychedelic drug. It's a crazy illicit drug, illegal drug that's used. They've been studying it and found that people suffering from PTSD coming back from the war, or I guess there's other PTSDs and abusive relationships, but specifically our veterans who are suffering from PTSD connected to their wartime experience, this drug is helping them and even cause them to completely come out of PTSD. So they said, well, use it then. Use it then. I realized how that makes total sense in a godless world where there is no God. It's just another form of what feels good, do it. Whatever works, do it. Why do you do it? Because it works. Because there's no thought for the long term. Because they just see, oh, apparently it works. They don't really know if it works or not. They just know that, well, this guy doesn't seem to be behaving that way anymore. They're giving him a potent drug that's burned out people's minds and caused them to lose their minds and become totally useless and unable to cope or be functional in society. And yet they're experimenting with this stuff. I guarantee you that if they are coming from there is a God viewpoint on life, they never even would have experimented with such a thing, let alone come to this conclusion. So you have this situation where this God, this world, we are being fed all kinds of drugs and horrible things that even in the very advertising where they're promoting them, they have all kinds of warnings of horrible things that can and very likely will happen to you. Because if they list about 15 or 20 of them, the chances are one or two of them or at least is going to happen to you. And they're extolling the virtues of it while saying, yeah, well, look out, bleeding from the eyes or mass depression or self-destruction comes into your mind. You might want to get to a doctor and check that part out. So I just wanted to record that thought because they'll say, well, you simplify everything. You Jesus people, you God people. God's the answer to everything. It's just not that simple. And I think they're missing it. Not that they have to agree with what I'm saying, but from my standpoint, it only makes sense. I believe in God. I know God. I know what God is capable of. He made everything. He made the universe. You shouldn't have a problem dealing with my little issues. That's my viewpoint. I understand that's not theirs. But for them, from their viewpoint, to say, well, that's ridiculous to put your faith in God. You got to have some drugs and you got to have some medicines and you got to have some doctors. Or they'll say God gave you that or something. And I realize a lot of religious people say the same things. You got to have drugs for depression and you got to have Ritalin and you got to have all these things that are so good and so wonderful. And I can see where they have absolutely no faith in God. No faith in God. There's no difference between the people who claim to trust in God and the people who do not. Because they ultimately, when the going gets tough, they lean on something in this world to find a way to cope or to function or to survive. And it's not on their God that they rely on. I'm not saying that you wouldn't use material in the world. It's just an attitude they have, an attitude of what do you trust in. And when it's so, I was thinking of Prager in specific, where he raves about the miracle drug companies. They are just doing miracles. They're doing wonders, signs and wonders. They're showing wonderful, amazing works on behalf of humanity as they medicate and alter the state of mind, of the consciousness of reality of people with these narcotics, with these psychotropic or whatever they call them, drugs. It's amazing to me. But that does make sense in a godless world. It makes total sense. But it shows the carnality of people who do claim God, but they adhere to these things. And so churches are filled with these people, just filled with antidepressants, filled with all kinds of narcotics, all kinds of drugs, all kinds of things to keep them from falling apart. I said, yeah, I know, yeah, God, but God but this, God but that, as opposed to it's only God.